Yeah, so we are currently in module 4 of our like Power BI course for healthcare analytics. And this module, I'm just going to be going more into like data exploration and data cleaning. And this particular video, I'll talk about introduction to DAX and cleaning. And probably this is the first time you're hearing about DAX, or you even know about DAX, or you don't know what it means. I'm going to talk about that in detail. So if you're going to do Power BI a lot, you need to know what DAX is. You need to kind of know how it works and how do we explain that. But from our previous video, we remember that we did have this data here where we had like member dates of birth, but their age was incorrect. Let's look for where that data is. So one of the things you can also set for, a column here and say, let me say age. I know, so that's under dimension member. That is something you can also do. um so it's under dimension member, and we know that the age was correct, but we do have like a wrong age here. So but we need to create a new column where it's going to be it's going to like reflect the current age. So once we do, okay, based off of today's date, minus it by their date of birth, and so that this is like updated anytime we refresh or open Power BI. So one thing you can do is, so far we are right here on this particular table, make sure you are clicking the right table. You're on this table, and we can either click on new column, or even if you X out of that, I click on this, my new column is here, or I could just come here to that table and right click and click on new column. So to create a new column, so what I will have to do is I'm going to have to write a DAX function, and my DAX function, I'm just going to probably call it a new name. So this is like the name of the DAX function, like the name of like the new column I want to create. Instead of calling it column, I'm just saying I want to call it age new. Because we do have like another name. Ideally, the best bet is just to always use like underscore when you have like two words. That's like the traditional practice. So first thing is I'm going to say date. There's a function called date div. So when I say date div, so most function will start with an open and close brackets. Ideally, I'll tell you to just like add the close bracket already. So instead of pressing enter on your laptop, press shift and enter. So this is going to go like a different line, and you maybe just tab this so that everything looks a little bit nicer. So what do we want to do? We want to look at the date difference between today's date and the date of birth. So that's going to give us the age. That just makes sense. Like if you want to capture what is your age as of now, you just have to know what is today's date minus your date of birth. But we want to see it like in year. So what we want to do, let's first of all pick our table name. So our table name is dimension member, right? I can just pick on this, right? Or I just scroll down, dimension member, date of birth. So if it doesn't come that way, I probably have to type in everything. Remember again, so you have to press comma. Yeah, and I want to say based off of today. So this is a function. Sorry, it's a function. I tab on this. That's why the bracket, open bracket, and close bracket came. You might not need to tab. So this is saying, give me the dates difference between the, and if it's not like this, is not the date difference. I'm just going to give me the difference between the date of birth and today. But what I want to see, instead of giving me like the exact difference, I want the difference to be the year. Just return only the year. So that is how like a DAX function works. You see that it's a little bit quite intuitive. So I start with the major function, give me the date difference. I open and close the bracket. That's a function between this like table and based off of the date, and return the year. So and there's a comma. So if I do this age new, I'm just going to click on that. You will see that right here it gives me the age new, and you're like, oh, why is it 0? Because most of this age here is starting from this year. So I'm just going to, if I sort like say ascending, you see most of the age right now is showing me 91. Or I could also see that the age is from 1 to 91. So right now we have a correct age. So but that is what I just did here was a DAX function. Let me go back to the major stuff. So the question is then, what is a DAX function? So it's a formula language in Power BI that we use to create like calculation, business logic, analytics inside of a data model. All of this is still sounding a little bit complicated. You see, because it's a calculated column, that's why it sort of has the sign, meaning it's dependent on a different column. So most of the times when we want to do stuff in Power BI, or you're even doing things, there are like some functions. Like functions are, I mean, if you're coming from Python programming language or R or anything, you probably understand the concept of function. But I mean, you don't need to go into like the depth analytics, but it's just like, okay, you want to create something that's been inbuilt, something like a machine or something. Like when you work with that, it's just going to create something for you. Because everyday data expert, what we want to do, you want to sum something, you want to find the difference between something, or you want to look at like the year over year change, like what's the ranking. Those things might not be readily available, so you have to derive them yourself. So the language that you use to write that is called DAX. So if you're coming from a programming language, you're writing R or SQL. And DAX is a little bit similar to SQL. So if you know how to use SQL to an extent, you should be able to interpret a DAX function. The good news right now is that you don't have to even memorize the DAX formula. You just have to be able to even put into words like what you're looking for, like what your DAX function. You could even go to any of the AI prompts to say, okay, I want a DAX function that could do this. So for example, you just have to say, okay, I want a DAX function that tells me the difference between the like today's date and a date of birth, or I want to derive and I want to derive the person age. I have the date of birth. So you just have to explain that. And when whatever the AI tool returns to you, you see the DAX function and you also read it line by line to be sure that it kind of makes sense. But it's best to understand like the fundamentals of a DAX function. So let's do something here. One of the things you need to know is that a when you look at your data and the data has like this summation, it means this is like either numerical data, that is, it is like a triangle. And I guess this is where you have to check my other videos on data types. So this is like a number, like a numerical data. So if I click on this, I see that this is like a number, right? The age is a number. So compared to like all these ones that are text based, so they are categorical data. So all these ones that are number, I can do more stuff with them. I can make summation. For example, I could also even want to write a DAX function. Maybe I'm trying to write something whereby only sum the risk score where the chronic flag is yes, right? I could write a DAX function for that. And because you might not want to also just have to apply a filter, or maybe there's even a layer of complexity. Sum the risk score where the chronic flag is yes, and also the age is above like 20 or 18, because you expect that people that are older. So there are some things you want to do whereby the stakeholder want to see what is the risk score for male and female altogether, and they don't want to keep switching the filters. When we go to like the visualization aspect of things, I'm going to talk more about that. But this first video is just giving like a basic difference, like how to understand the concept of a DAX function. So we see here that this is like numerical data. So let's try to do something with this function here. So with this like numerical data here. So we want to just sum the age. So you just want something that sums all the age. So I click on this, but instead of creating a new column, I'm not creating a new column. I'm going to create a new measure. Now you might wonder, why would I choose a column and not a measure? Where you choose a column is where whatever you want to create, you want it to be like line by line. That is for every ID or for every individual in the data set. You want to see that data for them, right? But now that I want to sum the age, or I want to sum like whatever I want to sum, summation is everybody. So I can't say, okay, let's say the summation of all the age or the median age. Let's say I want to find the median. The median age is 60 or 40. I can't just put median age, all of them 40, 40. That doesn't make sense. So I don't need to put that somewhere. I just have to like create that as a measure. So a measure is like whenever you create a measure, most of the time you want to see that measure in your canvas here, that is in your visual pane. When you're trying to make your visualization, all of these things will start to make sense. But for now, a good number of times, a lot of times you would actually be creating new measure, not even a new column. A new column is, you probably have to like maybe even do that before you put your data in Power BI. So I'll create a new measure, not new quick measure. That's a different thing. So I'll create a new measure. and I want to say, let me say, maybe some of age. It doesn't make sense to sum age, because in the real world nobody sums age. They always look for the average age. Nobody says all of you, let me add your age together. So you have to think about, so it's as simple as writing sum. So not sum x is also another thing, sum. So it says, ideally what I like to do is whenever I write a new function, I just close the brackets immediately and I'll press shift enter. So it says, okay, do I want to use it? Where's my data from? Sum of what? I can't just say I want to sum the old table. So I want to sum the age new, right? So that is that about this function. So I could then say, you see now the function is here. A good number of times, I would just recommend that whenever you're creating a function, because you're creating a function, it's best to like probably put a sign where all of them are probably together. And that's, it just all depends. So you could have it this way, but let me not go that way. So sometimes I probably just put something like, I don't know, f underscore, so that when I start creating more of my function, I'm going to see them all together. But this also added stress to this, because when you then create the function, you don't have to rename. But this is just like a cleaning approach. So let's say I want to then find the average age. I just have to click on this again, click on new function. So exit out avg uh avgh. So you're just going to do so, I'm just going to click average. All these are like simple functions. Then just say average of some new, and then it says okay, I'm done, right? And that is it. So this is a simple function. So we have this right here, and that is that. So let me create a new function in this one. Let's see if we have a numerical data. We don't have one here, but we should have in the first claim. So the bill amount, maybe say I want to see what is the sum of the bill amount. So, and it's also best to, whenever you're creating your function, you have a name that is quite descriptive, so that is clear. Sum bill amount, amounts, and so we say sum, right? Or you can also say, let's say divide. What are we dividing what by? So we are dividing, so it tells you what's the numerator, denominator, and this is optional alternative. Maybe you put 0 if it is not. So we want to divide, let's say the build amount. So I'm just going to close it first of all, press enter. So what do I want to, what will be my numerator? So I want to say build amount is going to be, so I'm using fact claim. Remember, facts. So a good number of times when you use divide a for a for a for use divide when you have your a measure, or like you create a measure with it within this. So let's say what I'm trying to say is that since I already did a sum, so this is a layer of this is a layer of, what's it called? This is another layer of like a function. So if you see what we have here, it says numerator, denominator. So numerator, then I'll put a comma, and denominator, then I'll put a comma if I don't want to put that, or maybe alternative result 0. So let's see. So let's try this out. So I want to say, I want to I want to divide the allowed amount by the build amount and see maybe what the ratio is. I can't just say, I can't, because I have to pick the table first of all. So it's not showing me that. So it shows that I have to find a summation of that first of all. So I name it first of all sum. I want to sum the like sum of what's for fact claim of the allowed amount. So I make sure you close the brackets. So when it sums that, then I also want to sum the fact claim of the build amount. Then if it's not that, then just return 0. So just going to leave this, since it's showing me red, it shows there's something wrong. Let me leave this like that. So if if the function is not correct, it's probably not going to work. So we see that automatically it tells me, oh, it helps me even put the second like bracket, because I needed to close this bracket. Oh, I see why that wasn't working. So that wasn't working because automatically I needed to close this bracket. Yeah, because then, so if the summation doesn't work, then return 0. This is optional. So this is saying sum the allowed amount, sum the build amount. Then if, let's say, the summation doesn't work for some reason, like you can't sum maybe minus something, there's some summation formula that should not work, then just return 0 for me, or maybe return null or something. So return null. Okay, I think it wants me to take, it's gonna maybe want me to put like a return null. So remember that when stuff is a text, you have to quote it. It's also going to tell you, oh, this is wrong, or you can even just copy this and put it on the AI prompt. I'm trying to do something. How is this going to work? So it's a lot of numerous function. Is more about like what is your use case. And in the next video, we'll just talk more about like other functions and all.